Sometimes you might have someone, let's just say it's a guy who just can't get the lower abs to show. Like there's just always a little bit of lower back fat that won't come off. And we can keep dieting them, but at a certain point, it almost seems like they just start really stringing out, or I don't know if they're losing muscle, but it's like they're just so zapped of energy. How do you deal with that situation? That's a tough one as a coach.
Usually what will happen is once you start to tap into that stubborn body fat, you've typically reached the point of significant discomfort. People who have gotten to that level for the first time, they're probably going to get a little bit stringier than somebody who's never gotten to that level, because at the risk of sounding, engaging in hyperbole, it's very traumatic to sometimes try to get that stubborn body fat off for the first time. And so you are almost bound to lose some muscle mass. You've probably seen this with competitors over the years, or even with yourself. Then the next time you try to do it again, it's almost like you're mentally and physically prepared for what you're going to engage in, and then you can get it off the second and third time without it being as traumatic, either mentally or physically.
Right. That's super well said. Okay, great. So after talking to Cliff about some intelligent ways to get completely diced for a competition, next I wanted to speak with someone who's more focused on sustainable approaches to fat loss. So I got sports nutritionist Sohee Lee on the line, who did her master's thesis on the psychology of eating behavior. And she explained a few of the biggest mental roadblocks people run into and some of her best tips for women.
Well, I think generally speaking, men and women tend to make a lot of the same mistakes, but what I see a lot happening a lot, maybe I see it more in women because I work primarily with women, but what I've seen is that they don't want to hear about a more moderate strategy that they can utilize for their plan. They want to hear, cut out these entire food groups. You can't eat dairy, you have to go keto, try intermittent fasting. And as you know, while none of these strategies are incorrect necessarily, they're also not required in order to see fat loss progress. And I made this mistake to myself for many, many years, where I focused more on what I thought was the perfect plan on paper, but I didn't consider my current lifestyle and my current preferences and what would actually be feasible for me to consistently execute day after day after day. So what happened was very common, where you get very excited in the beginning, and this is a very common psychology mistake that people make, where they rely too much on motivation in the beginning. They underestimate how difficult some journey will actually be, and then 1 week in, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, they quit. And then they're on to the next thing, right? And I think we call it shiny object syndrome. So they're always looking for the next fad diet, the next cool thing that sounds interesting, rather than, oh, well, what tweaks can I make to my current lifestyle to nudge me in the right direction over time?
And throughout our conversation, Sohee emphasized how important it is to create repeatable habits, so you don't need to be so reliant on self-control for every decision about food.
So there's always this idea that if you want something, you have to just try harder, right? Or if you fail on your goal, it's because you didn't have enough self-control. The research consistently shows that self-control is very, very helpful in the initial formation of habits, but it should not be utilized as an ongoing strategy for long-term behavior change. And the key feature of a habit, unlike self-control, it does not require cognitive effort for the habit to take place. So if we go into your kitchen or your home environment, your work environment, wherever you spend a lot of time, are there things we can change around to make maybe the higher calorie, the more calorie dense foods more annoying to access, right? If I put it at the top of your pantry, way in the back, chances are your intake is going to drop substantially because you're not going to be bothered to go that extra effort. We call this designing for laziness. And